Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Ebby, and this is Jambalaya Podcast. I invite you to come stir the pot with me as we get into a wide range of topics. Yes, indeed. Where you at? Hello, this is your host, Ebby, with Jambalaya Talks. And I wanted to kind of chime in a little bit with a video broadcast this time. And my particular subject is a myriad of things. It's going to kind of mix the Ketanji Brown issue with also some of the fallout of the Chris Rock Will Smith. I know we're all tired of hearing about it, but I just want to kind of offer a different perspective from a emotional, psychiatric, political view. Not really focusing on the slap heard around the world, as they call it, but more the perspective of why we're even being shown the slap around the world. And I won't really get into if it was preemptively done or if it's a scam, or because at the end of the day, anything that celebrities are involved in and we're shown it thousands of times over, you can kind of just put two and two together and go, there's a reason why they want us to have an opinion about this dumb issue that doesn't affect any of our lives on any level. But first, I kind of want to open with something that I thought was really funny. And it's by a woman named Meredith Bogus. It was a Women's Day article, April 14th, 2015, in case you want to go look it up. And it says, the Kardashians are a family, not your family. So why waste precious moments discussing anything they do? Very good. Number 2, someone famous changing their hairstyle is not news and is definitely not breaking news. Beyonce is a singer. She's not a queen. She's certainly not a deity. And if you go check BeyonceMass.com, it's an actual website where people gather together to honor her as a goddess or some such nonsense. That's real. Whether or not two very rich people continue dating has no effect on your life, and you shouldn't be sadder than if they break up or consciously uncouple, whatever that means, a la Gwyneth Paltrow, Chris Martin. So you know this is dated because they've not been together in a long time, so we've been told. And buying a purse because it looks vaguely similar to something that a celebrity you like bought won't make your life even vaguely similar to theirs. Just thought this was interesting because as much as we can kind of poke fun at what celebrities do, I think that some of us have a tendency to be a little too invested in these people's lives. And given that that's the case, especially now in the culture that's kind of been created or curated for us, I find it interesting that if you get together with friends and family, you always have that one person that knows more about a celebrity than they do their own family members, or is more involved or concerned about a couple breaking up or a person being unfaithful. And that's kind of why I think the Will and Jada debacle is getting so much attention, is because people are so invested in these people's lives. We've kind of been trained to care about these people. And I think the only reason we've been trained to care about them is because of conditioning. So I'm going to share this other thing with you before I get to the conditioning information I want to share with you. It says, this is from Sean Leary, October 15th, 2021. And the title says, ever notice that the media pushes celebrity stories to distract us from actual news? Kanye West says something stupid. It's news. Taylor is dating Jen's ex. Oh my. Ever notice that the more heinous things get regarding the economy, wars, presidential scandals, etc., the more intensely the media ignores the real news to concentrate on either celebrity scandals or deviant crimes? Sometimes I wonder if there's a grand conspiracy regarding celebrities as well. What if celebrities are nothing but programmed Manchurian candidates? And if you guys all listened to my first video, well, actually it was an audio podcast on YouTube, I actually kind of used some of the storyline and a video clip from Manchurian Candidate. What if they're just Stepford performers? You guys remember the movie or the show Stepford Wives, where the women were created a specific way? They were perfect for the men that ordered them, but they actually end up not being so perfect. What if these people are just hypnotized and controlled by secret government handlers who then program them to do silly crap to distract the masses every time such a distraction is needed? The bigger the mess people need to be distracted from, the bigger the celebrity distraction pulled out of their neither region. So I would say that if you're going to have an opinion about Will and Jada, because now it's kind of, I'll say, devolved into a situation about what their marriage is or isn't, whether they're happy or they aren't, the red table talks and the whole mess. And I'm less concerned about that. I'm more concerned about, why do we care? Like, why do we care? Remember, the Grammys were losing a lot of ratings and views because people are just sick of, being told they should honor and worship these people, especially given the, what can I call it? The CVID issue that we had not too long ago. And we were, kind of preached at and, moralized by these people and told what we should and should not do with our bodies, only to find out that when you look a little closer under the carpet, they have their own dirt. But their image is sold to us as though we're supposed to believe everything they say or listen to them because they're our betters. But this kind of goes into what I really want to talk about, and that's the classical conditioning. Now, in one of my audio podcasts, I did talk about conditioning to some degree. I kind of referred to it. But I want to read something to you guys, because as much as I mention this, people have a tendency to look at these topics, whether you mention 1984, Brave New World, Pavlov's dogs. If you talk about Manchurian Candidate, if you discuss anything that is talking about the psychological job being done on people, I think it's hard for people to grasp. It's maybe above their pay grade because they've not read about these things before, but they lose interest really quickly. And those are the same people, by the way, that become a part of the narrative. They start pushing the narrative. If I tell you how many times I've seen people talking about support this side or this side in the present war we have, going on in another country that I won't mention, whenever you see that, it makes you wonder, do these people even know about the topic at hand? Have they looked at the history of either country? Do they know what part we play? Or are they just giving their opinion based on what they've been told they should think? And I've been seeing this happening for quite some time. It's sped up a lot more in the past couple of years. And unfortunately, it's even taken root in the body of Christ, which is my primary focus, because the world's going to do what it does. But believers are supposed to operate on a whole nother level. And when I talk to other people who claim to believe in Christ, it always blows me away that in their social media or in their conversations, they don't seem to be able to make a distinction between what they're told and what the truth is. And I mean, how can we claim to know the truth and have the Holy Spirit who reveals the truth of all things, but then at the same time be towing the line of the narrative that everybody is towing? It's just like a lack of discernment. And it's so frustrating because you'll kind of be categorized as not just a conspiracy theorist, but, as not being sensitive, to everybody involved. Like, you're supposed to have an opinion that's emotional and instead of an informed one. And if you have an informed one, you're always going to be called judgmental or whatever. So anyway, I digress. So what is conditioning? There are different types. Conditioning, classical conditioning, also known as Pavlovian or respondent conditioning, is learning through association and was discovered by Pavlov, a Russian psychologist. I hope I don't get taken off because I said Russian psychologist. The most famous example of classical conditioning was Ivan Pavlov's experiment with dogs who salivated in response to the sound of a bell. Pavlov showed that when a bell was sounded each time the dog was fed, the dog learned to associate the sound with the presentation of food. He first presented the dogs with the sound of a bell. They did not salivate, so this was called neutral stimuli. Then he presented them with food, and they salivated. The food was an unconditioned stimulus, and salivation was an unconditioned innate response, meaning something that was just natural to them. He then repeatedly presented the dogs with the sound of the bell first, and then the food, which is called pairing. You put the action with the sound. After a few repetitions, the dogs salivated when they heard the sound of the bell. The bell had become the conditioned stimuli, and salivation had become the conditioned response. So neutral stimuli, let's talk about that. In classical conditioning, The abbreviation is NS. It is a stimulus that initially does not evoke a response until it is paired with the unconditioned stimulus. So an example would be a sound or a song, a bell or a buzzer. You go to school, you hear the bell tells you that it's time to go to class. This isn't a conditioned response. This is not something that's being done intentionally to make you react a certain way. You just understand the sound is connected to having to go to class. Unconditioned stimuli. In classical conditioning, the unconditioned stimulus is a feature of the environment that causes a natural and automatic unconditioned response. So another example for this would be a sound or song elicits a feeling of enjoyment. Or pollen causes sneezing. That's an unconditioned stimuli. But where I want to focus is more about the conditioned stimuli and the conditioned response. So conditioned stimuli. In classical conditioning, the conditioned stimuli is a substitute stimulus that triggers the same response in an organism as an unconditioned stimuli. Simply put, a conditioned stimuli makes an organism react to something because it is associated with something else. A conditioned response, a sound or song paired with meeting someone. Let's say you met the love of your life and a song was playing. And now every time you hear that song, you remember that event. And let's say now you're married 20, 30 years, and that becomes your song. So in classical conditioning, the conditioned response is the learned response to the previously neutral stimuli. Neutral just means it doesn't have one side or the other. There's no particular connection to it. It's just in the middle, right? What we would call gray. It's not black or white. Now, the interesting thing about this is if you connect it to the Jada and Will situation, you'll notice that the video was played over and over and over again. And everybody, hordes of people I'd never even heard of popped up on YouTube giving their perspective and their opinion about it. And the interesting thing to me was the amount of views they got. And I don't believe it was because they hadn't heard perspective about Chris Rock being slapped. It's because people like watching a train wreck, especially involving people that they like or look up to. People even were arguing in the comment sections about their perspective or their opinion and defending Chris or defending Will, people that they'll never meet more than likely, and people that don't impact their life in any way. And I thought to myself, how interesting is it that we could have loved ones suffering, going through something, and we can become so callous and indifferent to them. We're not calling up everybody in the house or in the family, finding out how we can be of assistance to them. We're usually trying to ignore them or avoid them. Maybe we don't have a good relationship with them, but we're not interested. But we're so interested in these people and what they're doing. That's a conditioned response. We've been conditioned from the time we were young to look up to these people, to care about what happens to them. We get in the comment sections and fight with each other. I don't. I'm pretty sure you don't, but some do, about who is wrong in the relationship. Think of any celebrity and you'll have people with an opinion about this one did this one wrong, or I like them where they were together, and buying their clothes because we see them wearing them, or wanting their life, or eating the food they tell us to eat, going on the diet they tell us to go on, getting the hairstyle they tell us to get, and having an attitude with other people who tell us it's stupid, right? We'll even defend their bad behavior and emulate the bad behavior. Why? And I'll tell you some of the reasons I've heard. Well, they have money and you don't. So we'll respect them because they make money, never thinking about the conditioned response we've been trained to have. So we're essentially Pavlov's dog. And every time we hear the bell ring, we have a reaction. We're no longer neutral to the stimuli. It is conditioned. It's something to think about. Now let's talk about extinction and spontaneous recovery. So in psychology, extinction refers to gradual weakening of a conditioned response by breaking the association between the conditioned and the person that was having the conditioning done. So an example would be there's no longer a reward given for the behavior. So what they did with Pavlov's dogs to kind of remove this conditioned response was they would ring the bell, but no more food would be put out. And the dogs slowly realized that that bell was no longer associated with the reward of food. For a while, they would still salivate because their brain was trained to associate the smell of the food and the eating of the food with the sound. To break that dog from that conditioned response, they had to slowly stop bringing the food out. I would argue that maybe we need to have some extinction, a disconnect from the things that we keep responding to, so that maybe we can get back to focusing on the things that actually matter. And I'm going to get to that in a minute. The last part of this is called spontaneous recovery. So there's no longer a reward given for the behavior. The next thing is a phenomenon of Pavlovian conditioning that refers to the return of a conditioned response in a weaker form after a period of time following extinction. So the behavior changes when the stimuli associated with the conditioning ceases. I mean, think about it. We use this with our children. If we've conditioned them to get a dessert if they eat all their broccoli, they expect every time they eat the vegetable to get a dessert. Problem with that is, what if they're eating the broccoli and we don't have a dessert? They're going to act up. They're going to misbehave because we've conditioned them to respond a certain way. And I know as parents, we've all kind of done the whole, if you eat all your dinner, I'll give you a dessert thing. But it's really bad because it teaches them that you don't have to do this thing I'm saying because it's the right thing to do or because I'm saying it. You have to do it because you're going to get rewarded. And life isn't always like that. But my question is, what reward are we getting from caring about these celebrities? Like, what are we actually gaining? Are we focused more on our families anymore? Are we making better choices as mothers and fathers, as daughters, as sisters, as neighbors? Are we actually looking out for people who can't look out for themselves? Or are we just worrying about Jada and Will's relationship and how they're going to work out? So one of the interesting things that I found this bled over into is an opinion piece by someone. In fact, there's two. One is by Teo Barrow. And it says, this kind of performative pearl clutching is reserved for Black men who mess up. It was a bad incident, but the Oscars have seen worse. This is Tuesday, 29th March, 2022, 5:36 Eastern Time. And the title of her opinion piece, notice it's an opinion piece, white outrage about Will Smith's slap is rooted in anti-Blackness. It's inequality in plain sight. And I had to laugh out loud when I read this because I thought, my God, how is this idiotic situation, this performance piece by two very wealthy Black men in any way reflective of white people on any level? And some people will be upset, primarily Black people, that I'm saying that. And I don't care because I'm really so sick of every event that happens amongst Black people being somehow a white person's fault. Like, if white people are the cause of all of our ills, then they would have to be the reason why we get better. I mean, if the problem is rooted in them, then the answer must be too, if we're not going to take any responsibility. And forgive me, I don't feel sorry for two rich Black people slapping the crap out of each other on a stage over dumb stuff, like whatever. So this is her piece. It's the Black Hollywood equivalent of being dragged to a corner and told off by your parents for cutting up in public and embarrassing your family. Except Smith isn't a child, and the stakes here are much higher. Either way, it's clear that many people, even those in the community who mean well, only find the incident so objectionable because they hoped Smith would perform propriety for white people in that space. What? What is she talking about? Or he, because I don't know if this is a woman or a guy. What are they talking about? Propriety for white people? I mean, these are two people at an award show, right? They have private chefs. They go places that we can't even name. They can buy whatever they want. Shops are closed down for them to shop. And one Black man slaps another Black man, supposedly for disrespecting his wife. And I wonder if that's even really the reason he did it. We're supposed to believe that he didn't behave in a way that white people were expecting him to. I'm sorry. If I see anybody slap anybody like that, I'm not worried about the complexion of their skin. I'm thinking that is so unfortunate that they thought violence was the answer, period. I digress. But let's not forget why all this started in the first place. In case there was any confusion, alopecia is absolutely a disability. My daughter, who is 9, has alopecia. It is not a disability. It's not causing you to not be able to live your life. Can it be embarrassing? Sure. Can it be uncomfortable? Definitely. And when it comes to a woman's hair, regardless of how much melanin she has, the Bible says that a woman's hair is her glory. Women have hair and they like to style it and wear it, and it adds, yes, femininity to them. How is this in any way a disability? This isn't cancer. My God, this is so stupid. Anyway, It says alopecia is something that Black women are more prone to. I don't know where she gets that information, but fine. Whether or not Rock knew about Pinkett Smith's condition, the politics of Black women's hair is well known to be a historically fraught and often traumatizing topic. He should know. He made a documentary about it in 2009. Let me just say something about this particular piece that I find so hypocritical. I'm a Black woman, in case you can't tell, and I have heard all kind of disparaging things about my hair. But you know who I predominantly heard them from? Other Black women. I have had more compliments from white women because let's be clear. When you're dealing with another community from a different ethnic background, people are fascinated by differences. I have white friends who have asked to touch my hair, who have touched the texture of my hair and my daughter's hair and said, it's so cool. It's so beautiful how you can change your hair. I've had Black women tell me, why don't you wear your hair straight? And why do you style your hair like that? Why did you have dreadlocks? Because I had dreadlocks for a period of time and it was not pleasing to a lot of people. But they were Black. They weren't white women telling me anything. And if any white woman did like my hair, she never told me. She never touched it and discussed. Never told me I was better if I had European straight hair. Never dealt with that. So this drives me crazy when we talk about the historicity of Black hair. Yes, I'm very well aware of the whole Black women having to cover their hair. And I believe it was during the Reconstruction era, maybe even Jim Crow. But you're talking about empires and hierarchy where people can control you and they will use every law possible to control every aspect of your being. So that's not special to Black women. If you go look at Asian people, you go look at even white slaves, they all had certain rules they had to live by because it was a way to conquer people, to control everything. Look, part of my testimony, which I'll give one day, is I was incarcerated. You know what happens when you're incarcerated? You cannot wear certain hairstyles. That's just what it is. You have to follow rules because you are under the governance or the authority of another group, the state, particularly in that place. But let me continue this foolishness. So anyway, still, this kind of punching down on Black women remains typical of many Black male comedians who, like the rest of the world, don't see Black women's struggles and experiences as real or legitimate. Okay. And this lack of care for Black women also partly explains why people were so taken aback by the image of Smith standing up for his wife in that way. Were they taken aback by him standing up for his wife, or were they taken aback that he thought he had the right to physically put his hands on another grown man? I mean, you would have to get into the hearts and minds of people to know why people were taken aback. And to assume it was because he was standing up for his wife is absolutely ridiculous. I'm not saying that wasn't his intent. What I'm saying is you can't assume that's why people were upset. That's nonsense. If I'm in a public space and I see someone getting hit, I'm not going, oh, there he goes, taking up for his wife. I'm not used to seeing that. Right. So it says the world is so, and this is the part that kills me. The world is so used to seeing Black women as unworthy of being protected and fought for that it can't see any merit to Smith's actions or the emotions that spurred it. I mean, get out of here. Ugh. Listen, I'm of the mind of Jordan Peterson. You need to clean up your room before you want to change the world. And I cannot stand people in my community who look like me having issues with this kind of thing and the fallout from it, and then want to turn it into some type of politically charged race issue. Everything is not because you're Black. Everything is not because you're Black. Everything is not because you're Black. I don't know, 3 times the charm, right? Let's hope it sticks. All right, here's another one. Last one. This one is by Karen Ataya. This is the Washington Post, March 28, 2022. This is a columnist writing on international affairs. She writes on culture and human rights issues. Now, this one gets into the weeds a lot more because it deals with like ketanji and all that. So she says, defending Black women's honor happens so rarely that when it does, it's newsworthy. Last week, after receiving patronizing and frankly racist treatment by GOP lawmakers, I'd throw that tidbit in, Jackson was moved to tears when Senator Cory Booker, the Democrat out of New Jersey, simply acknowledged her humanity. You got here how every Black woman in America who's gotten anywhere has done, he said. by being like Ginger Rogers said, I did everything Fred Astaire did, but backward in heels. Puke, gag, cringe. Okay. Booker's words were moving, but so much harm had already been done. Over hours of hearings, no one directly shamed the lawmakers and stopped them from engaging in ridiculous, insulting questions. Can I just stop right there and say, how is it insulting and ridiculous to ask her why her record on pedophiles and the judgments that she gave in those cases seem to be a little bit light? How is that a racial issue? I'm trying to understand. We care about children and their well-being. We care about how a judge rules in these cases, right? So was it because she was Black they asked that? Because to my mind, I've seen other people getting a position of judge and they were asked all kind of crazy questions about beer drinking on the weekend and rape that wasn't proved. I've seen that. So if they're asking questions based on complexion, it seems to me across the board, they're asking hard questions on both sides of the aisle based on whoever is coming up for that spot. Why is it that when a Black woman, I'm sorry, forgive me, did I say woman? Because we can't define that, right? We don't really know what that is. Okay. A Black person goes for this position, all of a sudden they're insulting her. So this woman who went to, she has high education, very well trained in her profession from what I've read, and she can't handle questions without feeling she's insulted, and it's only because of her race. Okay, sure. Instead, what we got was fawning coverage about Booker's speech. And yes, talk about how KBJ preserved with grace and resilience in the face of indignities. And I watched all the questioning and I didn't see any dignity. So, I guess it's everybody's perspective is different. On Monday evening, Smith apologized for his behavior. We will see what, if anything, Pinkett Smith will have to say about her husband after the Oscars mess he caused. But we need new options in this culture. The choice for protecting Black women shouldn't be between male violence and everyone else's silence. When it comes to defending Black women, America is still stuck on stupid. No, I think the person who wrote this is stuck on stupid, personally. And I think it's absolutely asinine that we have to turn some foolishness between two rich people into a white versus Black situation. But see, this is that conditioning thing. It gets us angry. We get in spaces with real people in real time and we can't talk to each other because of this nonsense. So let me share a graph with you. It's called the circle of concern versus the circle of control. And this is where I'm going to close. So the circle of concern is how reactive people act. It's a large circle of concern and a small circle of control. A lot of time and energy is wasted reacting to issues they can't control. So let me tell you what's in the circle of concern. The sex lives of celebrities and politicians, the economy, the news, what other people think of you, political views of others, natural disasters, the weather, wars, weapons, and terrorist threats. In the middle of that circle is where you live, where you work, what you read, and what you buy. So I don't want to be in that circle, and I don't think you do either. So let me tell you the circle we should be in. It's how proactive people act. It's a small circle of concern and a large circle of control. A lot of time and energy is focused on issues that are within their control. What's in this circle of control? Your attitude and enthusiasm, places you travel to, businesses you start, where you work, what you read, what you buy, where you live, leadership positions you hold, what skills you learn, articles and books that you write. And I'll add to that, the family that you help take care of, provide for, and the God you serve. So instead of us being little cogs in the wheel of Pavlov's dog's conditioning and always being reactionary to every foolish thing we see on TV that we cannot control, how about we start kind of showing up more for our husbands, our wives, our children, our neighbor, the sick relative, the one who won't take certain things into their body, the ones who do, the ones who don't have the same political ideology, maybe not even a spiritual person, but we care about each other because whether we believe it or not, and we may have forgotten it over years' time, we are all interdependent. What you do affects me and what I do affects you. So let's stop running every time we hear the bell. I want to say thank you for joining me for Jambalaya Talks. I really enjoy sharing these things that I read with you. And I hope that, if anything, I conveyed just maybe a different perspective on how we can look at these things that come at us all the time. The news cycle is always changing and it's really hard to keep up with, the constant news cycle. But let's stay focused. And I hope you join me next time for Jambalaya Talks. Thanks for listening to the Jambalaya Podcast with me, your host, Ebby. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. You can find me on IG at Jambalaya_Talks, on Twitter at Jambalaya_Talks, on Facebook as Jambalaya Talks, that's all one word. And on YouTube, please subscribe, hit the notification bell so you can be notified when we upload new content. And don't forget to hit that like button. See you next time.